I don't care what anyone says, winning the lottery isn't just about luck. It's about knowing exactly what to do once you've got that winning ticket in your hand. And I knew from the second those numbers matched that I wasn't going to tell a soul. Not yet. The jackpot was massive, enough to make my quiet, ordinary life vanish overnight. But I'd seen too many stories of winners whose lives turned into chaos. Relatives you haven't heard from in years start showing up. Friends suddenly remember debts you supposedly owe. Strangers beg for handouts. No, I wasn't going to let my win turn into a free-for-all. So I made a decision. I would keep living like nothing had happened. And before I did anything with my winnings, I wanted to know exactly who would stand by me when they thought I had nothing. Now, before I tell you what happened next, let me ask, have you ever kept a life-changing secret just to see how people would treat you? If you have, or if you think you could, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss the rest of this story. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments what you think of my plan and where in the world you're watching from. I love seeing all the places these stories reach. I started with the people I thought I could trust the most. My family. My cousin Brenda lived about 30 minutes away. She had a big house with more bedrooms than she knew what to do with, a backyard pool, and a kitchen she bragged about on social media at least twice a week. Brenda and I weren't especially close, but we'd grown up together, spent summers at our grandmother's place and been in each other's weddings. I figured if anyone would open their door to me in a hard time, it would be her. So I called her one Tuesday morning, using my most exhausted, slightly desperate voice. Brenda? It's Lydia. I'm in a bit of a situation. My landlord sold the house I'm renting and gave me almost no notice to move. I'm still looking for a place, but I need somewhere to crash for just a week. Maybe less. Do you think I could stay with you? There was a pause. Not a thoughtful one. More like the sound of someone deciding how honest they wanted to be. I don't know, Lydia. We've just got so much going on right now. The kids have school. And with Mark working from home, it might just be disruptive. I let the silence hang there. She could have stopped right there. But no. Brenda decided to keep talking. And, you know how it is. Guests can really eat into the grocery bill and things are tight for us right now. I almost laughed. Tight. She had just posted a picture of her impulse buy, a new $3,000 espresso machine, 2 days ago. I didn't push. Sure, I understand, I said softly. It was just a thought. We hung up and I sat there staring at my phone. I'd called expecting either a yes or at least a regretful excuse. Instead, she'd made it clear. If she thought I had nothing to offer her, she had nothing to give me. And that was exactly the kind of person I wanted to remember when I started deciding how to use my new fortune. That same day I tried my brother. We weren't close, but we shared blood and memories. His answer was almost word for word Brenda's, minus the grocery bill comment. Not a good time, house is a mess, things are hectic. Hectic. He didn't have a job and spent most of his time playing video games. By the third no from someone I'd once called a friend, I realized this little experiment wasn't going to make me feel sad, it was going to make me powerful. Because when I finally decided to reveal what I had, it would be to the people who had shown me kindness without expecting a single thing in return. Over the next week, I rotated between cheap hotels and a small Airbnb just outside of town, never telling anyone where I was. I didn't even use my real name for the bookings. I wanted the illusion to be airtight. One night, sitting on the edge of a lumpy hotel bed with a takeout box on my lap, I made a list. On one side, the people who had turned me away. On the other, the people who had stepped up in small ways without even knowing my situation. A neighbor who had offered me dinner once just because. A woman from my book club who'd given me a ride home when my car broke down. A cashier at the grocery store who always smiled and asked how my day was going. These were the people worth my time, worth my help, worth my trust. The refusal from Brenda stung more than the others. Maybe it was because she had the means to help without breaking a sweat. Or maybe because she didn't even bother to pretend she was sorry. It wasn't about space. It was about her not wanting me there. I decided then that when the time came, Brenda would be the center of my revenge. Not just because she'd refused me, but because she had a reputation in our family for being the generous one. She loved to play the role. throwing charity events, bragging about donations, handing out leftovers at holiday dinners like she was saving the world. Well, I was about to see how generous she'd feel when she found out exactly what she'd turned away. But before I made my move, I had to make sure the reveal would hurt just enough to teach her a lesson, without it looking like I'd planned it all along. For the next 2 weeks I played my part perfectly. The broke, displaced cousin. The woman trying to figure things out. Whenever someone in the family group chat asked where I was staying, I'd say, "Oh, just here and there," and add a little sad emoji. Brenda never asked directly. She only commented once, "Hope you land on your feet soon." Which, coming from her, felt more like "hope you stay out of my way." Meanwhile, my winnings sat untouched in a private account under a trust name that only my lawyer and I knew about. I hadn't told a single person, not even the book club ladies or my kind neighbor. This secret wasn't just a shield. It was ammunition. My first step toward revenge wasn't about confronting Brenda. It was about learning everything I could about her life. The real one, not the curated version she posted online. I started small. A few hours scrolling through her Instagram, noting the people she tagged, the places she visited, the charity events she attended. Then I dug deeper. County property records, HOA minutes, even the nonprofit filings for her pet foundation that raised money for stray animals but somehow spent more on catered dinners than on actual shelters. The more I found, the clearer her pattern became. Brenda liked to be seen as generous, but only if it came with recognition and applause. Quiet kindness wasn't her style. Helping me wouldn't have earned her anything except my gratitude, and clearly that wasn't enough. Still, I didn't want to go in guns blazing. A good revenge needs layers. And the first layer was to put myself in her orbit again, without her realizing what I was planning. I made sure to show up at a few family gatherings. Brenda always arrived looking flawless, in designer clothes that still had that just-purchased crispness. She'd give me the polite 2-second hug and then drift toward whoever had the most eyes on them at the moment. At one Sunday lunch, she was showing off pictures from a recent gala. "We raised almost 50,000, she told the table, smiling like she'd just saved the planet. I smiled back, thinking about how easy it would be to double that number, and how much more satisfying it would be to do it without her. By the time dessert came, I had a plan forming. Step 1 was to find an opportunity that Brenda couldn't resist. Something that would draw her in close, get her invested, make her think she was the one holding all the cards. It came in the form of a charity auction she was organizing for her foundation. The venue was upscale, the guest list was packed with business owners and small-town influencers, and the local paper was sending a photographer. I called her the next day. "I heard you're putting together the auction. Do you need help with anything?" "I'm not working right now, so I've got time." There was a pause, shorter than the one during my "can I stay" call, but still telling. "Well, we could use someone to help set up on the day. It's a lot of tables and decorations. You'd need to wear something formal for the evening, of course." She made it sound like a chore, but I could hear the calculation in her voice. Having me there would make her look good. Generous. Evasive. Perfect. Happy too, I said, hiding my smile. What Brenda didn't know was that I was about to be the single largest donor at her event. Not because I cared about her cause, but because I knew exactly how to make it sting later. Through my lawyer, I arranged an anonymous donation, $100,000, to be announced at the auction as coming from a special friend of the foundation. I made sure the only instruction was that the donor's identity would be revealed by the donor themselves if they wished. That way, Brenda would bask in the glow of having attracted such a massive contribution, and never know until the right moment that it came from the cousin she couldn't spare a guest room for. The night of the auction, I arrived in a gown I'd had tailored just for the occasion, deep emerald silk that caught the light every time I moved. My hair and makeup were flawless, courtesy of a professional stylist who had no idea she was helping stage a revenge reveal. Brenda's smile froze for just a fraction of a second when she saw me. "Wow, Lydia, you look fancy," she said, her eyes flicking over the dress like she was trying to guess the price tag. I spent the evening helping with last-minute table arrangements, pouring wine and making polite conversation. The guests were generous, bidding on everything from spa packages to weekend getaways. When the MC announced the anonymous $100,000 donation, the room erupted in applause. Brenda put a hand over her heart, pretending to look overwhelmed. "This is just so incredible," she said into the microphone. "We are so grateful for this kindness." She had no idea. By the end of the night, I'd decided exactly how I was going to tell her. Not in front of the crowd, that would be too quick. Too easy. No, I wanted her to think about it for days, to feel the creeping suspicion that she'd made a huge mistake, until the moment it was confirmed. The seed was planted. Now I just had to water it. For the next few days after the auction, I played the role of the supportive cousin perfectly. Every time Brenda posted about the record-breaking fundraising night, I would leave a little comment, "So proud of you," or "What an amazing night." Just enough to make her think I was on her side. Meanwhile, I could see the slow shift in her behavior. She started inviting me to little things, not out of kindness but because my presence at her events made her look better. In her mind, I'd gone from a burden she didn't want to deal with to a useful accessory. I knew it wouldn't last. And that was the point. The real game began when I sent her a text on a Wednesday afternoon. "Hey Brenda, I'm working on something special and I think it could help your foundation even more. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow?" She replied almost immediately, "Of course. Always happy to talk ideas." I picked the most upscale cafe in town, the kind where a latte costs more than a full breakfast elsewhere. When she arrived, she was dressed like she was going to a photo shoot. Cream blazer, gold jewelry, perfectly manicured nails. She gave me that polite hug, the one that barely touches your shoulders, and sat down. "So," she said, leaning forward, "what's this big idea?" I smiled. "It's more of a thank you actually, for letting me be part of the auction. It meant a lot." She looked pleasantly surprised, probably already thinking about what she could get out of this conversation. "I have a friend," I continued, "who's interested in making a significant contribution to causes they believe in. They saw the auction, heard about the anonymous donation, and they were impressed." Brenda's eyes lit up. "Really? That's amazing. Who are they?" I shook my head. "They prefer to stay private for now. But they're considering making another donation, this time directly to the foundation." I told them I'd arrange a private meeting so they could see exactly where their money would go. She was practically vibrating with excitement. "Lydia, that would be incredible. Do you think they'd be willing to give a hint about the amount?" I shrugged, sipping my coffee. "Let's just say, it would make the auction donation look small." That was all it took. He was hooked. Over the next week, I negotiated with myself via my lawyer, sending Brenda updates about how my mysterious friend was asking for more information, wanting to know about the foundation's spending, the projects, the success stories. Each time she responded faster, more desperate, as if this donation was the golden ticket she'd been waiting for. Finally, I set the date for the meeting. I told her my friend would be there, but they were very private and might not want to talk much at first. Brenda spent days preparing. She sent me photos of her cleaned-up office, the documents she was going to present, even the snacks she planned to offer. It was almost too easy. The day arrived and I showed up at her office right on time. Alone. She frowned slightly. "Where's your friend?" I smiled, taking a seat. "Oh, they're here. You're looking at them." For a moment she didn't get it. Then her mouth opened slightly, her eyes flicking back and forth like she was replaying our past conversations in her head. "I'm the one who made the auction donation," I said calmly. "And I was considering giving even more. But then I remembered, when I needed a place to stay for just a week, you told me it wasn't convenient." The color drained from her face. "Lydia, that was... I didn't mean..." "I know exactly what you meant," I said, cutting her off. "And that's fine. You showed me who you are. And now I'm showing you who I am." I stood, smoothing my dress. "The donation stays because it's for the animals. But as for anything more, you can consider that door closed." I walked out, leaving her sitting there in silence. I didn't need to raise my voice or make a scene. The beauty of it was that she'd have to live with the knowledge that she'd shut the door on a life-changing opportunity, just like she'd shut the door on me. What I didn't tell her was that my revenge wasn't finished. Because the next part of my plan wasn't about money. It was about her reputation. I didn't sleep much the night after I told Brenda the truth. Not because I regretted it. Oh no, that part was delicious. But because I was thinking about what came next. Brenda had built her identity like a glossy magazine spread. Every photo perfectly lit, every post about giving back, dripping with humble brag energy. To her friends she was a saint. To the family, she was the dependable one. To the town, she was the face of charity. I knew from the moment she turned me away that my revenge couldn't just be about denying her money. That would sting, yes, but only for a while. Brenda's real currency wasn't cash. It was her reputation. And if I could tarnish that, it would cut deeper than anything else. The beauty of revenge done right is that the target never sees your fingerprints on the weapon. I started small, the way you'd start a slow leak in a tire. A passing comment to a mutual acquaintance. Funny thing, Brenda's foundation spends more on its galas than on actual shelters, but I'm sure she has her reasons. Not said with bitterness, just as if I was repeating something I'd overheard. 2 days later, I casually mentioned to someone from her gym that Brenda seemed a little stressed lately. I guess all the donors asking where their money's going will do that to you. By the end of the week, whispers were floating around. Nothing concrete, nothing that could be traced back to me, but enough that people were starting to look at her with curiosity instead of admiration. Then I gave the whispers something to feed on. The local paper had run a glowing piece on the auction, complete with a photo of Brenda holding a microphone, beaming. I sent an anonymous email to the journalist, thanking them for the coverage but suggesting they look into the foundation's spending patterns for a possible follow-up piece. I attached copies of the public nonprofit filings, highlighted of course on the most damning figures. A week later, the paper published a short but pointed article, Questions Raised Over Charity Spending. They didn't accuse Brenda of anything illegal, just noted the high ratio of event expenses to direct aid. But it was enough to shift the tone. The comments section on her Facebook post about the article was a battlefield. Some defended her. Others demanded transparency. And Brenda, bless her heart, couldn't resist replying to every criticism with a defensive wall of text, which only made her look worse. While she was busy firefighting online, I moved to stage 2. The donors. Remember that list of names I'd gathered from her Instagram and the auction program? I had my lawyer, under the guise of a donor interest group, send them polite letters. Each one thanked them for supporting the foundation and included a few publicly available facts about the spending, along with a suggestion to ask for detailed reports before making further contributions. Not all of them would pull out immediately, but enough would hesitate to make her feel the pinch. The first time Brenda called me after the article dropped, she sounded brittle. Lydia, I don't know what's going on, but someone's spreading rumors about the foundation. Rumors? I asked lightly. Oh, you mean the spending thing? Isn't that just public record? Her silence was thick. I hope you tell me if you heard anything. I'll keep my ears open, I said sweetly. From there, the cracks widened fast. At a family gathering a few weeks later, I overheard our aunt asking Brenda if she was okay financially. Brenda laughed it off, but her eyes flicked toward me for half a second. He was starting to wonder. That's when I knew it was time for the final touch before the knockout blow. I reached out to one of the local shelters Brenda's foundation claimed to support. I asked very politely if they'd be interested in a direct donation from me. No middleman, no gala, no event expenses. I gave them $50,000 on the spot. The shelter director posted a thank you on Facebook with a photo of me holding a rescue puppy. The caption was innocent enough. A huge thank you to Lydia Crosswell for her generous direct donation. But the timing was perfect. Within hours, the post was being shared in the same circles Brenda usually dominated. People noticed. They commented. They asked questions. And suddenly, the contrast between my direct giving and her expensive parties was glaring. Brenda didn't call me after that. He didn't have to. I could see everything I needed to in the way her perfect social media posts started to slip. Less sparkle, fewer smiles, captions that sounded defensive instead of celebratory. I had taken away the thing she valued most, and she couldn't even accuse me without exposing the truth. But I wasn't done. Because the final chapter of my revenge wasn't going to be quiet at all. It was going to be loud enough for everyone to hear. The great thing about letting rumors and questions swirl for a while is that by the time you drop the truth, people are already leaning in, waiting for the next piece to fall. Brenda's foundation was limping. Donations had slowed, social media engagement had shifted from praise to thinly veiled skepticism, and Brenda herself was clearly fraying at the edges. I'd been patient, careful, calculated. But now the final act would require precision, and a little theatrical flair. The opportunity came in the form of an annual community leadership awards ceremony hosted by the local Chamber of Commerce. Brenda had been a recipient 2 years ago, and this year she was presenting one of the awards. It was a big deal. Press, local TV coverage, and half the town's business elite in attendance. I made sure I had a seat near the front, dressed in a sapphire blue gown that commanded attention without screaming for it. I didn't want to overshadow the moment. I wanted to be part of the scene until the exact second I stepped out of it. The plan hinged on 2 things: timing and delivery. When Brenda stepped up to the podium, she looked almost like her old self, hair perfect, smile polished. But there was a tightness around her eyes I hadn't seen before, a carefulness in her words, as if she was trying to keep everything from unraveling in front of the cameras. She gave the usual speech about service, generosity, and leadership. About how every contribution, big or small, makes a difference. The irony almost made me laugh. When she finished, the applause was polite but not electric. She stepped down, shaking hands, moving toward her table. That was when I made my move. I stood up before she could sit, my clutch in one hand, and walked toward the stage with a smile. The MC, an old acquaintance, looked at me curiously, but I leaned in and whispered, "I'd like to make a quick statement as a local donor." He handed me the mic without hesitation. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady but warm. "Some of you may know me, but many of you don't. My name is Lydia Crosswell. Over the past few months, I've been fortunate enough to make some contributions to causes here in our community that mean a great deal to me. I want to thank the shelters, the food pantries, and the grassroots groups who put every dollar directly into helping people and animals who need it most. You are the real leaders here." A ripple of applause. I let it settle. And I also want to share something personal. Not too long ago, I found myself in a difficult position. Suddenly without a place to stay, needing just a little help for a short time. I turned to people I thought I could count on. Some said yes. Some said no. The room was silent now. I could feel Brenda's eyes on me. I learned that generosity isn't about how much you have. It's about how willing you are to share what you can when it matters. And I also learned that sometimes the people who talk the loudest about helping are the quietest when the opportunity actually arrives. I didn't look directly at her, but I didn't have to. The shift in the room told me exactly where everyone's eyes had gone. So tonight I want to announce one more gift. A $250,000 direct donation split among 3 local organizations, each of which I've personally visited, each of which spends at least 90% of their funds on the actual work they claim to do. The applause this time was louder, more genuine. "Thank you," I said simply and handed the mic back. I walked back to my seat, every step measured, while Brenda sat frozen. Her smile was gone. The cameras had caught everything. The contrast between my direct giving and her increasingly questioned foundation was now public record. By the end of the night, I'd been approached by more than a dozen people thanking me, shaking my hand, asking about my causes. "Brenda." She slipped out before dessert. The fallout was swift. Within a week, 2 board members resigned from her foundation. Several large donors pulled their pledges. The local paper ran another article, this time comparing the efficiency of various charities in town, with Brenda's near the bottom. Social media did the rest. I never had to say her name. I never accused her of anything. But everyone knew. The best part? My secret, my lottery win, was still mine alone. No one knew the source of my sudden generosity. As far as the town was concerned, I was simply a kind, wealthy woman with a big heart and a sharper memory. And Brenda? She was left to rebuild her image from the ground up, knowing the only person who could have saved her reputation was the one she turned away without a second thought. That, I decided, was worth far more than any jackpot. The weeks after the award ceremony felt peaceful. Not because I'd forgiven Brenda. No, that was never part of the plan. But because the storm I'd unleashed had done its work and I no longer needed to push. It's funny how quickly public opinion can turn when a carefully constructed image gets its first crack. At first, people just question in private. Then they start speaking up. Then they stop supporting entirely. By the time the damage is visible, the rot underneath has already spread. I watched it happen to Brenda in real time. Her social media shifted from glamour to damage control. Long, defensive captions about misunderstandings and misrepresentations. Pleas for patience. Gratitude posts aimed at the dwindling number of people still commenting hearts under her photos. In the real world, it was worse. I'd overhear her name at the grocery store or the cafe, always followed by lowered voices. Invitations to speak at events disappeared. The gala she'd planned for next spring was postponed indefinitely. The woman who once had the whole town in the palm of her hand now couldn't even grip the edges. I could have told everyone about the lottery win. I could have made it part of my revenge. Revealed that the cousin she'd refused to house for a week was sitting on millions. But I didn't. Keeping it to myself wasn't about secrecy anymore. It was about power. Because I knew that no matter how Brenda tried to spin things, she'd always have that unanswered question in the back of her mind. If I'd helped Lydia, would things be different? She'd never know that the money had been there the whole time. That a yes instead of a no could have bought her more than just goodwill. It could have bought her an ally. Instead she chose convenience. And I chose to remember. I started making quiet donations to organizations Brenda used to support. Always directly, always with transparency. The people running them were grateful. And sharp enough to see the unspoken comparison. They didn't have to say it out loud. I could see it in the way they'd mention, "It's nice to know where the money's going," when they handed me a receipt. Word of my giving spread, but without the circus. No galas. No speeches. Just results. I'd get the occasional card in the mail from a shelter, a thank you photo from a food pantry, and it was enough. And yet, every so often I'd catch sight of Brenda in town. We never spoke, but there was always that split second when our eyes met and she knew, I hadn't just moved on. Family gatherings were the most interesting. Brenda tried to act normal at first, but the dynamic had shifted. Where once she'd been the center of attention, now there was a careful distance around her, as if people were weighing whether being close to her was still worth it. Meanwhile, I was no longer the quiet, struggling cousin in the corner. I was the one people gravitated toward, not because they knew about the lottery but because they'd seen who I was when no one was looking. That was the thing Brenda never understood. Reputation isn't built in public. It's built in private, in the moments when no one's applauding. A month after the ceremony, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was short. "Lydia, I made a mistake. I hope one day you can forgive me. B." I read it twice, then set it aside. Forgiveness was never the goal. She wasn't asking because she wanted peace. She was asking because she wanted relief from the discomfort of what she'd done. But I wasn't in the business of giving her comfort. Instead, I folded the letter, slid it into a drawer, and locked it away, not out of spite but as a reminder. A reminder of what happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness. The lottery win had changed my bank account, yes. But Brenda had changed me. She taught me that the real luxury in life isn't money, it's choice. The choice to give. The choice to hold back. The choice to make someone feel the weight of their decisions without lifting a finger. And I'd learned to wield that luxury like a blade. The last time I saw her was 6 months later at the farmer's market. She was alone, hair pulled back, no makeup, scanning the produce like it was the most important task in the world. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and decided to look away. Either way, I kept walking, the sun warm on my back, a bag of fresh peaches in my hand, and a quiet satisfaction in my chest. Because revenge isn't about rage. It's about balance. And Brenda and I, we were balanced now.